I know.
Running that machine.
Yeah.
Peach printers.
Good
chance to see
You got the hoses there. Running during the day.
Yeah, today I think she was
Very clear.
Yeah. Yep. The trails intervention. I'm going to see if I haven't seen it. You should be aligned.
Yeah, we noticed that.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Oh, okay.
We're ready.
I'd like to call to order the Town of Somers Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for Thursday, July 9th. Seated with me is Dan Ferrero, Howie Curro, Brad Pelsier, Chris Locatelli, and the Zoning Enforcement Officer, Jennifer Roy, and the Town Attorney Representative is Al Curdo. All right, first item on the agenda is new business application PZC 26-008, David Lugenbuehl, 42 Dillenbeck Road, Somers, application for lot line revision reconfiguration.
You can turn the microphone on.
If you just hit the button so you can see the green, and you can sit down.
Do you want me to explain for you?
Sure.
I sent you guys the map.
Yep.
He's got a large parcel on Dillenbeck, and we're just proposing to move his lot line to have the neighbor have a larger piece of his property. I did go over this with Jeff Catlett, sanitarian, and there's so much land, and it's not anywhere near the house that he's building or septic to interfere with reserve area. So it's a fairly simple application. Do you want to see the map?
I had looked at it already.
Same here.
What's the purpose of doing that? The neighbor is going to purchase the property from me. Gotcha.
A few acres, and for a lot line revision, a public hearing is not necessary.
Since no lot's being destroyed, it's not a subdivision, it's just moving a
Do
lot.
you want me to open the map for you?
I've seen it on.
Oh, yeah. No, it's just moving his line, give the guy more frontage, the neighbor more frontage.
Okay.
Move to approve the application for one lot subdivision on PZC 26-008.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you need a second or?
Is that the Mylar? I'll have them sign it after the meeting.
Okay.
And then, thanks.
Next item on the agenda is the discussion, possible decision on application PZC 26-006, Giuliano Family 1 LLC, 7 and 47 Old Hampton Road, Somers, seeking a modification of special use permit conditions of approval regarding processing of materials. We had the public hearing at the last meeting. The public hearing is closed, so all that's left is to discuss and come up with a possible decision. Does anyone have any comments from the last meeting? Okay. Can I get a motion?
It occurs to me, listening to the comments from the last meeting, that the idea that processing shouldn't occur was to prevent just the sort of rash of emails we received regarding the processing. So I would make a motion to deny the application for the revision.
Is there a second? Does anyone want to make a motion to approve the application?
So ultimately, here we're just
approving processing, correct? The comments are mainly because they were doing it on the weekend and creating noise, correct?
That he was doing it in general, but he has applied for this modification.
To
The
allow it
only
now.
condition he's asking to be lifted is processing, not blasting, splitting, fracking, none of that.
During the same hours that were already on the permit, correct?
Right, which,
Yeah.
you know, if he does violate that, then he'll get a cease and desist. Even if you allow the processing, he would get a cease and desist, and if he still did it outside of hours, that's still a violation.
Sure. I'll note that, I probably would have approved that processing on the original application if it had been added to that original application.
I agree. It's part of construction, so it's part of the process that needs to be done. So to limit him would only be handicapping him in his project. I think just governing him on the times, obviously expressing the concern of the public is the main issue.
So you want to make a motion, or do you want to make a motion to approve it?
Sure, can you read it right? All right, application PZC 26-006, Juliana Family 1 LLC, 7 and 47 Old Hamden Road, Summers, seeking a modification of special use permit. Conditions of approval regarding processing of materials. I'd like to make a motion to approve the modification.
I'll second that motion.
Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Against? All right.
Brad, what was your vote? Abstain.
Next item on the agenda is public hearing continued from June 11th. Application PC 26-007, Oak Ridge Dairy LLC, 39 Hurlbut Road, Summer, seeking a special use permit for the storage of manure per section 214-3.C.5.D of the zoning regulations. Hello.
Hi. Am I on?
Yes.
Okay.
Here.
For the record, Dory Reiser from KKC Law. As you mentioned, this is a continuation of the public hearing you started about a month ago in connection with an application for storage of manure at 39 Hurlbut Road. My understanding is we left the hearing open pretty much because you had a lot of information you received that evening. You wanted some time to digest it and see if... and see if there's any additional questions that arose after you had a chance to do so. I do have some final conclusory comments, and I did have a chance to also go through in more detail some of Attorney Parks' handouts, so I have a few comments on that. But why don't we start with you all and see if you have any specific questions for me?
I think we covered the 4 containers and what was needed. It's needed
Okay.
for the size of the property. How long will the digestate be stored in the tanks or held, whatever terminology you want to use?
Well, it goes in, it comes out. We had talked about the process of
Right.
how the digestate comes in and goes out. It's filled on a daily basis, continually filled through the growing season, and as soon as it's filled, it's goes out through the hose into the Rain 360 robotic device that spreads it on the crops. So the same digestate is not held for long at all, because again, it goes in, goes out, but there will be a level of digestate in the transfer tanks perpetually transferring over, except then when it empties at night, and then we'll fill it again the next morning.
Well, that's what I'm asking. Do you know how long it takes to run out the 4 containers? That's probably a question for you guys.
Introduce yourself first.
For the record, my name is Seth Baylor. I'm with Oak Ridge Dairy. So it depends on the day. So like this weekend, it ran out because it was raining, so we don't run during the rain. But it usually runs out sometime in the middle of the night, and then we start filling it back up the next morning.
So it's like an on-demand system based on the need?
Yeah, yep.
Gotcha. And these tanks are just seasonal, or just year-round you're going to be filling them?
So they're on wheels. So they're used for the growing crop. So 3 weeks to 6 weeks in the summertime.
Do you plan on taking them off-site once the season's over, or do you typically keep them there?
We kept them there last year.
But they'll be empty.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And they stay in that same location. They don't move. The system has a hose management system that brings it to the field.
Yeah, yep. It's an underground hose.
But I forget which I read, if it was Deep or Krog or about inspecting them. I saw the stuff in there that there's a requirement. Is it by Deep the requirement to inspect weekly? I know you guys discussed.
Well, we had a condition of approval that we said we would do weekly visual inspections and do a yearly inspection by an engineer, which is actually even, I think, above and beyond what DEEP requires as part of the CAFO permit. Yeah. Correct.
Yep. Any other questions? Those were all mine.
Yeah, good.
Go ahead, Dory, if you.
Okay, great. Just say that. No, say there.
We have one more question.
Yes.
Tony
Hi.
Reiser, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. My partner Ken Slater was here at the last meeting, and I'm subbing for him tonight because he's out of town.
Okay.
When I was going through the materials, I noted that there was a reference to some emails back and forth from DEEP that were going to be supplied either by tonight or tonight. Has that?
We actually submitted those last week.
All right.
I'm sorry, last hearing. I had submitted one the night of the hearing, and my client had emailed a copy of the other one to Jennifer Roy the night of the hearing. So those should be in the file now.
All right, so we can check that box off.
Yes.
Okay. That
Thank
was
you.
all I had. Thanks.
Thank you. So as I said, I also had a chance to go through, and I think I touched on, in the brief time I had to review at the last meeting, most of this. But as I went through Attorney Parks's packet of information, as I pointed out last time, the Trinkus engineering letter was not with regard to this property. It was with regard to a property on Four Bridges Road. So its inclusion in this packet is a little disingenuous because none of these comments are relative to this specific application that's before you. Regardless, when I look at the letter, items 1 through 7.
Can you refer to what page number that is?
Well, it just says page 1. It's towards the back of, like the back
There's not a number
third.
on the bottom?
It's Trinkus Engineering, a February 27th, 2026 letter.
I got it.
Okay.
It's 27 for those of us that have a folder.
Oh, okay. So the items 1 through 7 have absolutely nothing to do with this application. That has to do with an application over on Four Bridges Road that was submitted to the Wetlands Commission. And item number 8, which is just some general questions about the tanks. I mean, arguably, they're similar tanks, so maybe it's similar questions, but I think we've answered all of that. He had questions about the length, width, and height of the tanks, and are they simply set on the ground, or is there a structural base? We had stated that they're on a permanent axle. How is the liquid manure pumped in and out? We had talked about that at the last meeting. And why isn't there a containment system around the tanks? Again, that was the last that was an application for Four Bridges. And this application, we'd explain the protective measures that we've got with regard to the grading and the basin area. If there were to be leaks, they would all be contained on site, wouldn't go off site, wouldn't run onto the road. So again, really has nothing at all to do with this application. And then there's also a reference to discharge the watercourse, which is inapplicable to this application. Attorney Parks also gave you a few pages, more than a few pages of AI research that he did too on this specific issue. And when I looked into that, really, most of it is things that we actually covered. It talks a lot about the CAFO general permit requirements and how it would need to be updated and reviewed by DEEP. And we know, and we discussed that, and we talked at length about the CAFO permit and the nutrient management plan that's part of that CAFO permit, all of which are not jurisdictional to this commission, but which are under the exclusive jurisdiction of DEEP and NRCS. But we do know that those are all requirements, and we are in constant, steady discussions with DEEP and NRCS in connection with updating, not just for this, but just routinely updating the CAFO management plan. It does actually even reference in Mr. Attorney Parks's memorandum under portable storage and portable tanks and trailers, that temporary storage of liquid digestate may not require a separate solid waste permit if it remains part of the CAFO operation in compliance with the CNMP, which is the Comprehensive Nutrient Management Plan, and the CAFO permit. So, again, just to put on the record, all along, our position has been this is an unregulated activity. It's farming as of right, because it is integral to the soil cultivation and the fertilization of the crops. Now, be that as it may, that's not what the commission decided. I'm sorry, the Zoning Board of Appeals decided last time, and so that's why we're here seeking a permit. Not Zoning Board of Appeals, it was this commission, I'm sorry, I'm getting it confused. But that's why we're here seeking a permit. But again, we do believe it's a permitted use. We do believe it's integral to the farming operations, yet we've applied for this permit, and some of Attorney Parks' own research says perhaps it's unregulated and doesn't need a permit because it's already covered under CAFO. And he also recites in his AI research that it's likely exempt as normal farming nutrient management done part of the nutrient management plan because it's part of farming. So there's a lot in here that he submitted to you. I don't want you to get bogged down by the pure volume of it. I want you to look at the real content of it. A lot of it covers things I think we've already covered in our discussions. We're fully compliant with DEEP. We're fully compliant with the nutrient management plan. We are under constant supervision and review by NRCS and DEEP with regard to our nutrient management plan. In regard to our operations in general, because as I also mentioned, as a dairy farm that has animals, this operation is so much more heavily regulated than other farms because of the manure that's produced by the animals. So because of that, they have to hire a professional to draft their comprehensive nutrient management plan. They are subject to review and oversight by those two bodies I discussed, NRCS and DEEP. Other farms are not, and they can't apply fertilizers without that type of oversight, such as your tobacco farms in town. So this is a very heavily regulated area. So again, I think we have touched on and addressed all of the CAFO issues that Attorney Parks rose. It's clear this is not a wetlands issue, so any references to the wetlands in his vast documentation I think is completely inapplicable. And for a large part, the Trinkus letter is completely inapplicable. You have a limited issue before you, and that's the storage of manure or digestate in 4 closed steel movable transfer tanks in the location shown on the site plan. We went through all of that at the last meeting. It's not about general application of digestate to the fields. There's no question that the application of digestate or manure to the fields is as of right farming, right? That's not the question. It's part of cultivation of the crops. There's also no question that it's not about odor. There's a lot of discussion about the odor and references to this as manure on steroids. That's not what this is. We talked at length about how the digestate process, the anaerobic digestion process, in fact, removes a lot of the odor. And I had submitted shortly after the meeting, I presume, Ms. Roy, did you have a chance to circulate that?
We're going to present it tonight, I thought.
Oh, well, I have two articles that I had submitted to, I'll get that in a minute, to Ms. Roy that talks about the odor reduction with anaerobic digestion. I'm sure you don't want to read them all, and they're lengthy, and I really don't almost want to submit more record evidence because I don't want to delay this any further, but I'm just going to read directly from this bulletin that was issued by the Dairy Environmental Systems Program, and it says odor reduction. Manure is commonly stored long-term, 6 months or more, to reduce the chance of pollution to water bodies. Long-term storage of raw, untreated manure often releases offensive odor emissions, especially when the storage is agitated prior to emptying and when applied to a farm's cropland. However, digested manure can be stored and recycled to the farm's land base with far less odorous emissions, allowing a farmer to be more flexible in how manure is stored and recycled to the land base. The rest of the article really is inapplicable. That was just the one section, but I also have another very comprehensive article having to do with just the anaerobic digestion system in general, and it also recites the reduction in odor. So it's...
Just a quick question.
Yes.
This might be more of a question for you. Why is the odor reduced? Like, is it because the methane separated out?
Yeah, so the methane is all the, so, real quick science.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
So if a cow was a furnace, it would be called very inefficient because about 75% of the energy it eats, it uses to make milk, keep her happy, healthy. 25% of it passes through. So what we're doing is taking the 25% of the waste, putting it in a tank, replicating the cow's stomach to reuse the 25% of that energy that's left in it and turn it into gases and remove all that energy. So there's really no living energy in it. So the methane, the gases are off of it. And then we scrub those gases clean enough to burn in a house. And all the impurities are out of it. So, and it's held there for 21 days. So the pathogens are all killed because it's held at 100 degrees for 21 days. So yeah,
that's what reduces the smell.
Correct. Yep.
Thank you. So again, this application isn't about general application of digestate. It's not about the odor of manure or digestate. It's not about traffic. The trucks and traffic go to the property anyway, and they have been going for decades, delivering manure to the site, and we're going to continue to do so. So, there was a lot of talk about traffic and trucks and coming and going to the site. The same number of hauls will be done. They're just spread over the season now instead of just in the spring and the fall.
Quick question. The digestate, you're currently using that already and have been.
Yes.
The only difference is the tanks, obviously.
Yes.
And we ran those tanks all last growing season and have been using them
Right, you see
this year.
I got you. I just
Yeah.
want to clarify that. So.
Yeah.
It's running today, isn't it?
So we're still doing the same number of hauls because remember we're still applying the same overall amount of nutrients. We're just spreading it out over the growing season, which is what we talked about at the last meeting. So that's not what it's about. It's about these 4 tanks. And we've reviewed the location, the access to the tanks, the security precautions that we've built in with the security lighting and the cameras and the other protective measures proposed with regard to the grading around it to make sure that any leaks would be contained on site. So with that, again, I believe we have now given you an application and lots of public testimony and opportunity to be heard and answer those questions, we hope. But most of all, I hope I answered your questions. We believe we're giving you a site plan that's fully compliant with applicable regulations. It's consistent with your plan of conservation and development because it's preservation of farming. You are an agricultural community. This is a sustainable practice. This is what the town is all about and has been for a century or more. The use of these tanks is integrally associated with the as-of-right farming use of the property because it is necessary for fertilization and cultivation of the crops. And because it's so integrally associated, it's in harmony with the uses for that area. It's in harmony with agricultural uses, which is a specifically permitted right in this zone. The specific location of the tanks is appropriate because it's off the road, like we were requested. Last year, I believe it was on the side of the road. We're 100 feet from the property lines, and the grading in the surrounding area to detain any leaks and keeping it from running off onto the road or off site, it's appropriately located. Provisions been made for safety. I touched on that just a second ago with the security lighting and the cameras, but also there's the monitoring that we talked about above and beyond what DEEP requires in the permitting process. Visual inspections, annual inspection by a certified engineer. And the road, again, already handles the traffic coming and going from the site. So there's no allegations or evidence of any undue congestion. I can assure you, again, this is a heavily regulated process, regulated by DEEP, regulated by NRCS. And that regulation protects the land and it protects the groundwater. We're doing all of this right. We're doing it in accordance with not just your regulations, but also all state applicable regulations. So I'd be happy to answer any additional questions that you have. But again, I hope that you had a chance to go through everything from the last hearing, because really the substance of the application was presented then. And we appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Quick question.
Yes.
You re-raised the topic that we discussed a lot last time of leaks, or even last time we got into catastrophic failure of the tanks, which is, of course, I think, a legitimate but probably low-frequency concern. I mean, if I look at traffic data, if I look at an accident possibility, sure, they're out there. I still drove here. I mean, I still get on airplanes. What, if any, is the data? I know the option to using the tanks is the spring-fall application you talked about, where you put a big pile down in the spring and a big pile. Is there any data on runoff effects of the two different approaches?
On this approach, this approach is putting it right on the roots.
Right.
So, and there's really no runoff at all.
So the application process,
Right.
the application process of the digestate applies it directly to the roots, so it will infiltrate immediately into the ground. And it's, we're not irrigating when it's already a heavy rain, like
No, I
Seth
just
talked about
remember
last week.
last
So
meeting we talked about the options being sort of the spray-on approach that you use now versus the spring-fall application that you were using prior to using this approach.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if there's a difference in runoff from putting it all down in the spring when you have spring rains as opposed to applying it all over this.
Yeah, so we have to be in compliance on both sides of it. In the spring and the fall applications, you're putting a lot more volume down in a one. So we'll go over this field 5 to 6 times over the growing season. So you put on a smaller amount. In the spring and the fall, you put it down in one shot. So you put more of a volume down. So this is spreading it out over 5 or 6 applications.
So with more of the volume going down at once, with more volume, it
would be
takes
susceptible
longer to infiltrate, so there's a higher chance of runoff.
Correct.
In that instance.
Okay, so this modern approach actually, under normal operating conditions, reduces the risk of runoff.
100%. Yep.
Would a safe analogy be like in a foot of rain over the weekend versus a foot of rain over a month?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. Yep. But both applications, we have to meet guidelines. But like they're both regulated. But if all of a sudden we get a 1 foot rainstorm out of the blue and we just put manure, we are regulated to do that. But weather events could come and put us in danger. So
yeah.
But the impact of weather events is reduced under this system.
Correct.
Okay.
well, if you have nothing else, then I will rest unless there's other public comment. Thank you. What's that?
You're putting your articles into the record, right?
I just want to make sure she does.
Yeah.
I don't have copies for everybody, but I probably will pass around. I'll pass around. How about, can I do 2 sets so I can give one to Attorney Parks? And I would just ask, if we are opening it to public comment, I'm hoping that we're going to limit it to any new information, because we did hear a lot at the last meeting.
So, Jim, I had received 2 emails after the last meeting from residents. So for the record, one of them is from a gentleman who spoke at the meeting, Mark Folsom, expressing his concerns. And the second one is from A. Scott Wiley, who had submitted written opposition as well. But I'm submitting it again for the record.
Thank you.
These are stabbers.
Okay. Attorney Parks, did you want to speak?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Yes.
For the record, my name is Attorney John Parks. I have an office in Enfield, Connecticut. I was at the June 11th hearing on behalf of property owners in the neighborhoods around 39 Hurlburt Road. I have prepared a new notebook, which I would like to be made part of the record here tonight. If there's anything that I omit saying in my presentation, if I've got it in my book, it's part of the record. I want to have it in there. As in June, I have a copy for each member of the commission. I also have a copy for applicant's attorney and surveyor, and I'll make a copy for councilors. I do not have a copy for every member in the audience, but as I did in the June hearing, I've left a yellow pad on the seat next to where I was seated before I came up here. If you put your email address on there, I will email you a copy of this booklet. So, the heart of this presentation is in the middle, okay? We have pictures all taken in the town of Somers of various activities by this applicant. But if we turn to page 12, we have what we call a compliance with regulation. The purpose of the compliance with regulation is,
Hold on 1 second. We're not seeing.
Yep, page 12, red dot, blue, yellow dot.
Yellow dot on 13, but there is no yellow dot 12.
It's
Keep going back.
pages, 5 or 6 pages.
Right there.
Oh, that's 11, but it's been crossed.
So they're not numbered sequentially. Okay. Then just use that in books.
I did the best I could.
Sorry. Okay.
But I'm going to reference the page numbers so that in the future you can reference this, and so that it's clear for the record what we were talking about. So the idea of a compliance with regulation is I compare your regulation with the application to determine if it complies. The white is section 7.12 of your regulation. The yellow is how the requirements of your regulation relate to your requirements. So this specific application is in yellow and your regulation is in white. So we're going to start with 7.12B4, which is the second page of Exhibit 2. And I'm going to read it carefully because language is important. 4 states, the plans for new and enlarged manure storage sites shall be submitted for review to the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, which I'll refer to as DEEP, and the United States Department of Agriculture, which I'll refer to as USDA, no later than the date of submission of any application for a zoning permit for such site. If you paid attention in English, shall is mandatory. So it's not like close enough or maybe, or optional. It is required. If you do what this says, you have authority to grant this application. If they do not do what this says, you lack authority to grant this application. As I stated less precisely than I am today last time, there are fatal defects to this, and I want to make sure the record is very clear that I make you aware of what those fatal defects are. So I'll read the yellow. Application PC 26007.
Hi. Before we got too deep in this, I thought I'd jump in with a question.
Yes.
So you're talking about plans for new and enlarged manure storage sites, correct?
Yes.
How do you explain whether these tanks meet the definition of a site? To me, a site, I don't know. Is the manure storage site defined somewhere for purposes of that regulation?
Well, you'd have to read the legal opinion by the town attorney given to the ZBA in connection with the the order given or the opinion given by our zoning enforcement officer.
No, but I thought that had to do with whether or not it met the zoning regulation for a storage tank. See, when I don't know, I'm asking you the question. I read manure storage site, and I think of manure stored in an open pit or a... Well, let me just finish the thought.
Yeah.
These are from my limited understanding, that these are sealed tanks. And it's not manure, it's treated digestate, if I understand the process correctly.
I'll defer to Mike Zitzka's legal opinion, which has been issued. So if you let me complete this,
okay.
I'm happy to answer all questions, because I have a feeling when I'm at the end, your question will be answered.
Okay.
Because I've been working on this for the last 6 months. None of this is willy-nilly. Everything has been looked at, researched, and documented for purposes of today's record. Okay? Again, application PZC 26007 is a new manure storage site application for 39 Herbert Road. The application is dated May 4th, 2026. The application stated, simultaneous with the application, the applicant will be submitting notice of this application and its intention to use the proposed Rain 360 irrigation system on the property with a division of the USDA and Connecticut Deep. However, the regulation, that's not what the regulation requires. The regulation requires plans for new manure storage sites shall be submitted for review to DEEP and USDA. Notice of the applicant's intention to use Rain 360 irrigation system does not comply with the requirement of this section. At the June 11th, 2026 hearing, no written evidence was submitted to the commission that, 1, plans had been submitted for review to the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection no later than May 4th, 2026. 2, plans had been submitted to USDA no later than May 4th. After the hearing, the applicant emailed a 3-sentence email from Seth Baylor to Emily Marshall at DEEP, dated May 21, 2026, to Jennifer Roy, the Summer CEO. The 3-sentence email was not submitted simultaneous with this application as represented. The 3-sentence email does not contain accurate details regarding this application. The 3-sentence email does not even mention the storage of 80,000 gallons of digestate, which is what this application is about. The 3-sentence email does not accurately reflect the nature and purpose of this section of the regulation. So the plans, the language is important. The applicant's failure to comply with only this section is enough to prevent this commission from approving this application. However, there is more. Next, section 7.12B5. I'll read it because the language is important. The above-ground storage tank shall be on an impervious, structurally diked area to contain any leaks or spills, with no drains, and shall be suitably covered to prevent precipitation accumulation. Again, mandatory, shall. This application fails to comply with 7.12B5, and I'm going to tell you why. Application PZC 26007 involves 4 above-ground storage tanks, approximately 80,000 gallons. The site plan submitted with the application is dated May 4, 2026. The site plan does not include an impervious, structurally diked area to contain any leaks or spills with no drains as required by your regulation. Any indication that manure storage tanks will be suitably covered to prevent precipitation as required. So there's no indication of that. And the photograph, if you'll turn to Exhibit 14, which is 2 pages beyond, is the photograph of the existing transfer tanks. As is clearly visible in the photo, the tank has an open funnel that is not covered. So, let's see where we are. Okay, so let's turn to, so failure to comply with this regulation is sufficient to deny this board the ability to apply this application, but there is more. Okay, the reason for 7.124 requirement for plans to be submitted to DEEP and USDA as stated in your regulation is so they can also review those plans. So failure to submit them to DEEP deprives that which was intended in your regulation. I was at all of the meetings in 2000 and 2021 where this regulation was passed to protect a town who the majority of the people are on wells, groundwater, from contamination by known carcinogens. So let's look at the plan the applicant submitted with this application to see what the USDA didn't see because no plan was submitted to them. First of all, it's on Exhibit 13. So Exhibit 13 is a photocopy of the plan submitted by the applicant. Exhibit 13 is a 20-scale map, and it has grades. And as you can see, by applying the scale and the grades, the proposal is to have 80,000 gallons of digestate 40 feet away from a well up gradient. Why is this important? This is important because the USDA, who this was supposed to be submitted to, has standards about the storage of animal waste. And that is on Exhibit 15 and 16 are the USDA standards for the storage of animal waste. And what you'll notice when you read that is the minimum for storage of animal waste from a well is 300 feet, not 40 feet, if it's up gradient. So we are 1/10 of the way there, and this plan would be easily denied based on the USDA's own regulations, but by not submitting it to them, of course, we've avoided that. And we hear from people who passed the Connecticut bar exam that we have complied with all the requirements of DEEP and USDA. I would suggest to you that your first selectman, the former commissioner of DEEP, and a person with credentials, including but not limited to a former assistant secretary of the NOAA, a Yale University Forestry and Environmental Sciences, the Hart Institute of Mexico Studies, and he has his own website called Gulf Industries, or Gulf, what is it called? Gulf Base, where he does the science for this. Not, I just...
Who's this that does that? Science for this? Who are you referencing?
Your first selectman, Timothy Keeney, okay? So...
I'm confused. What did he submit? I lost you.
So what I'm saying here is we're being told by people who passed the bar exam that this is just like manure and this is just farming and what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is...
I'm sorry, I'm as confused as he is, I think. What are you offering as Tim Keeney's testimony?
testimony? No, I am not offering Tim Keeney. I'll strike that from the record. So this digestate, this process with digesters is well established, well studied. They've been having problems with it since 2017. And in Exhibit 21 helps to explain how in Wisconsin, where they have this, 60% of the wells in that town have waste detected in it. So this is not safe. And the reason for it is that digestate and manure are not equal. Digestate, because of its process, is the Natural Resource Conservation Services within the United States Department notes liquid waste from digesters that is applied on fields may have a higher risk for ground and surface water problems than manure. The reason is the digester makes nitrogen and phosphorus more soluble in water. This is not my opinion. I'm reading from articles with people who are qualified for this. So this...
Where is this? Which
number 21 on page...
312, 312, 412.
I have highlighted for the commission the sentences that I'm reading from, and this one is on page 7 of 12, the top highlight. So we have this higher risk of ground surface water problems more than manure to make the nitrogen and phosphorus more soluble in water up gradient and 40 feet away from a well. Okay? So it was helpful to the applicant that he did not submit this to USDA because the USDA standards would not allow this, okay? And if you look at, let's see, not only are the defects in this application fatal to the application to store digestate in a town, this applicant shouldn't even be allowed to transport digestate in this town. As I've learned, navigating DEEP's bureaucracy, which is a nightmare, even DEEP has to afford residents of the town of Somers due process. It guaranteed by the United States Constitution. Every resident of this town is entitled to notice and the opportunity to be heard when it comes to the transportation and discharge of known carcinogens into the town's aquifer. And the residents of Somers were never given this notice, and I've documented all of this in this booklet so that we could object to it. This was exclusively in Ellington. All of this needs to stay in Ellington. You can't even transport it over the town line with the approvals that they got. After numerous FOI requests to DEEP that have gone unanswered about this very applicant, this very approval, what do I have for you tonight? All I have is page 23, Exhibit 23. The Commissioner of DEEP's last day was last week, okay? And that's after probably 4 months of requests for FOIs about the process that allowed this and the impact it has or is supposed to have on the town of Somers. All the pictures were taken in Somers. At the end, you'll see there's a Facebook post on the town's Facebook page. There are cancer clusters right across the street from their field in Watchog Road. 6 people. My classmate at law school, Glenn Davis, died of brain cancer. The person that moved into Glenn Davis's house 25 years ago, diagnosed with brain cancer. I mean, this is very serious for the residents of the town of Somers who drink out of wells. And I hope this board, number one, complies with your regulation. I hope that our first selectman does a cease and desist to prevent us from further contamination by this applicant. Thank you very much.
Any other comments?
Attorney Parks, just to recap, so overall what your argument is this process is a lot more hazardous than regular manure. Is that correct?
Extremely hazardous. However, at this level, I mean, that's for DEEP to start doing their job. That's for USDA to start doing their job. But at this level, here's what it's about. Did you, applicant, comply with our regulation? Clearly, no, on multiple fronts. So this is an application that's going to be a layup shot to deny, and then we'll take the next step once we say no to storage tanks. The next step is no to trucks.
So in the article you have where you highlighted that part about the Natural Resource Conservation Service within the USDA notes liquid waste from digesters applied fields may have a higher risk. The paragraph or sentence before reads, the EPA states manure digesters can reduce nutrient runoff into waterways as well as reduce odors and kill pathogens. So I'm just trying to, I don't understand who the Natural Resource Conservation Service is.
So there's a number of,
I know who EPA is.
yeah. So I'm not a scientist, okay, which is why I'm putting articles from people who know more about that than I do. I do know law, and I do know land use, and I do know an application has to comply with regulations in order to be approved. Did I swing for the fence with this notebook? Of course I did.
Thank you. Any other comments?
My name's Jill Conklin, 3 School Street. My name is Jill Conklin, 3 School Street. So I served on the zoning commission for many years. I say 20, I don't know, it could have been 19, maybe 18, but for a long time. During my time there, I sat through many applications, and the last few years while I was on the commission, I was the chairperson, having been involved in writing regulations, particularly the manure storage regulation. That was something that happened while I was there. I can say that that regulation was intended for the small farm, I've got 2 horses here, half a dozen horses over there. It wasn't meant for a large storage facility of liquid digestate. It's very different than what your traditional manure is. And based on that experience, I believe that this application is fundamentally different from what those regulations were intended to address. Those regulations were written for storage of a traditional small farm. People were complaining, my neighbor's got 3 horses, but they store all their manure right on my property line. If they don't want it in their yard, it's all up against the side here. So that's how that whole regulation came about. The homes in Summers, most all homes in Summers have private wells for their drinking water, bathing, cooking. That's what we use. If there was a significant leak, a failure, if contamination was to get into the groundwater, it would be devastating. There's big aquifers over there. I have a couple properties, a few properties in town. Where I live, I have city water, but I have a property, if I built on it, would be well water, pretty close to this area. The homes down on Michelle, you're talking Hurlburt, you're talking Four Bridges, that's all low land. When we had that big flood back, I don't know when, October of one year, you couldn't even get down Four Bridges. It was flooded over right past, just north of Sokol Road. So I looked up on the EPA website tonight, and because I have to be able to say where I'm getting this information. And nitrates are a serious thing. They're serious. You get them in water. They're very hard to get out. You have to use, I think, like reverse osmosis, which are thousands of dollars. I don't know if the average person can afford to put in, maybe a $10,000 filtration system just so they can drink their water. Me, myself, I don't want to drink bottled water. I don't do it. I don't like the plastic. I love my water. So that's, the substance, it gets into the blood. It reduces the oxygen. It causes this blue baby syndrome. It's not good for infants. It's not good for pregnant women or older people. High levels of it, you can become seriously sick in a short period of time. And I'm really concerned about that. I'm concerned about the trucks. I said I have a property on School Street. I was sitting there the other day, I think it was a Friday, and those trucks came through like clockwork every 10 minutes. I've got pictures of all of them. They just like rolling through, stopping at the stop sign, going up Hall Hill. I don't know how many gallons are in those big trucks. I would like to know how many gallons are in those big trucks. I would like to have an environmental study. So, like, let's say one of those trucks turned over. It may not be in front of my house or your house, or it may not be next to the farm. It may not even be at the end destination as to where this truck is going. But we should know what the cost would be if, let's say, it hit 20 wells. What would the cost be? Can this farm be responsible, whether it's a bond or show financial responsibility, that they'd be able to rectify the problem? Because, I mean, I don't want to pay for that. I don't think my neighbors want to pay for that. I don't think the town wants to pay for that. So, I mean, I take this pretty seriously. This is like I said, it's not just plain manure. You can look it up yourself. I know you guys are going to do a good job going through all this information. Again, the regulation was not intended for digestate. It was intended for little farms in town, little gentleman farms. So that's all I have for now. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. My name is Shelley Folsom, and I live at 73 Highland View Drive. I think that this is more of a public forum to make comments, but I'm going to ask some questions. I don't expect, Oak Ridge to do that, but I'm just thinking about some thought-provoking questions that you may ask in the future. So the first thing that's kind of curious to me is, what's the purpose of this change in the process? I'm not sure I quite understand that, and I think that might be a good question to ask. Is this an experiment that they're trying to do relative to a farming process, a change in a farming process? The other question I have is that tonight we heard that the number of trucks coming in and out of Summers will be the same, but I'm not quite sure how that's possible if we're doing this throughout the growing season. So usually what I heard last time was that usually it is done at the beginning of the process or this growing season at the end of the growing season. But now it's going to be, and I heard, the last meeting I heard every day. So I may not have heard that correctly. So I think that would be a good question to ask. And then the other thing that I was reading was relative to, and this is just my last point, relative to, the experiment, is it generally associated with a grant? Because I heard that there was some grant that was given to Oak Ridge, and I don't know if that's associated with what they're doing right now. So those are just some of my general questions. Thank you.
Good evening. Bob Teasing, 12 High Meadows Crossing in Summers. I think I have just a few comments. I think based on the testimony that you've received tonight and also the testimony that you received at the last public hearing and the information that you've got, based on the fact that Oak Ridge has not met their requirements with the DEEP or USDA or the Environmental Protection Agency, that you can't approve this special use permit. I think also the fact that digestate moves more quickly into the aquifer than regular manure is an important fact. I think that one of the things that came out in this testimony was that the storage tanks need a containment system, and that they have to be covered so that any rainwater that gets in there is not going to cause them to overflow and the digestate get outside of the tanks. Therefore, you have a containment system. And that's the end of my comments. Any questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll put my name on here afterwards. Thank
Go ahead. Afterwards. No, go ahead.
I want to take the opportunity to introduce myself. I'm Will Abramczyk, for the record. My company has exclusive rights to a product called RDX. The company is Water Chem Solutions. And from what I'm hearing and what I'm learning from the discussion here today is that there are conflicting interests. A long-standing resident tax-paying business entity here in the community is attempting to continue business and operations and expand and be relevant and leading edge with some of their technologies. And of course, the town is concerned with protecting the health and welfare of their residents. I would offer that these same concerns have been addressed at even a greater scale in New York State with large dairy farms. And with regards to manure application, there may be a solution that could satisfy both entities. We have exclusive rights to a product that renders manure as a Class A biosolid, meaning zero pathogens. Everything is converted and consumed into a Class A level of product that was, up until October of 24, land applicable. So because of PFAS, they pulled any biosolid product off.
I don't know what PFAS is.
I'm sorry?
I don't know what PFAS is.
It's the forever chemicals. These are the chemicals that we are all concerned about that build up in our systems and so forth, that are a product of various types of waterproofing applications and so forth, firefighting foam, etc., that get into the ground, that get into our systems, and we consume them without knowing, and they build up in our systems. So PFAS is a component of biosolids because they are consumed by people, humans, and then digested and excreted. So the PFAS component is a separate topic altogether. But the biosolids application to land applications is something that was only recently ended in 2024, but based on the PFAS. So the bottom line is there are products that can render the solution, the manure, the digestant, into basically a non-lethal, non-corrosive, non-contaminated type of product that could then be safely distributed on land, would eliminate odors and has some other applications. This has been approved, as I said, in New York State, specifically with agricultural applications, and I would ask that potentially the board consider looking into such a product that may satisfy the needs of a growing agricultural representative here in the town, but also protect the health and safety of the residents here in town. There may be some common ground here that could be found, separate from whether or not the application was submitted within regulations, etc. But there may be a solution to the product, and the ultimate goal could be met. Again, my name is Will, and I'd love to share some of that information with anyone who's interested in hearing it.
Please make sure you sign in, Will.
Certainly.
Will, are you working with the industry particularly, or the USDA?
My primary business is wastewater management. so operations and maintenance of wastewater treatment facilities. And then I produce or I supply non-lethal chemicals in that process. So this is a product that is under study right now through DEP with a pilot study in Cheshire, Connecticut, applying this product to sludge that is then rendered Class A and able to be handled in a very different manner. It's a product that helps with odor controls for municipalities that are struggling with odor issues from their waste treatment facilities. And as I said, this product came originally from agriculture. It was applied in many instances. Dried manure is used as bedding for bovine. In that instance, there can be a higher instance of infection and disease that could cause the cows to produce less. There'd be a higher cost in veterinary concerns. And so this is something that's already been tried, tested, and approved in the state of New York on very large-scale dairy farms.
Good to know. Thank you.
My name is Frank Orton, 160 Watchog Road. I got some information on a DEEP permit. Section 1, Section E, on transfer of fluids from a tank. I'm not going to read the whole thing because I don't want to take up too much time, but it specifically states about how to transfer fluids for the purpose of what the Oak Ridge boys are doing, okay? And on further down is the permit for doing it. And it's got 11 and 13 Jobs Hill Road, 115 Meadowbrook Road, 8 Hoffman Road. Doesn't say anything about Summers. This is a permit, $600 permit, 5-year permit. Only says Allington. Nothing about Summers.
Is that in regards to the district?
Pardon?
Is that in regards to the district?
Can't hear you.
Is that in regards to this chemical, this district?
Still can't hear you.
I'm asking, is that permit in regards to
the pumping station and everything?
But is it
for Ellington?
Correct. But is it
nothing for Summers?
But for what? For what? What are they pumping? What are they transferring? That's my question.
Liquid waste.
Is it the district? Is it the same chemical they're talking about?
Same stuff they were talking about.
Yes. All right. That's my question.
Well, I just woke up a little while ago. I'm not feeling very good. But this is the permit right here. Doesn't say nothing about Summers. Okay, so what they're doing right now is they're doing everything that they can do without a permit. I'm just piggybacking what John was talking about. That's it. That's all I want to say.
Ask them to make this part of the record.
Oh, yeah, make this part of the record, too.
You need to give me a copy, please.
Huh?
You need to give me a copy for the record.
I'll bring it down to you. You're not going to be here Friday, are you?
No, I need it.
I don't.
Give it to her.
Give it to her? Okay, I can, I'll give you the,
It's
okay.
probably already in the record, but,
It is part of the record.
Is it?
Okay.
so we've already gone over
This
it.
is from what was provided the last meeting, right?
That's where you got this information?
I don't know. I just got this a
You
week
may
and
have
a
it
half
from,
ago.
you may have it from the town sanitarian submitting it with his notes, but it's part of the.
You want to take a look at it?
No, I know what you're talking about.
Okay. Okay. That's basically what I wanted to talk about. That was it. But it does not say anything about Summers. All about Ellington. So what they're doing is they're doing this all in Summers, and they don't have a permit for it at all. So this is what I would say illegal. That's it.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Hi, my name's Pete Felix. I live in 50 Carriage Drive. I appreciate farming. I appreciate the importance of farming. I come from a long line of farmers. My grandfather was a herdsman. I have oil paintings of the prize bulls that he took care of at my home. My great uncle was a dairy farmer. In his later years, he couldn't straighten out his thumb due to all the milking. My mom and my dad worked on farms. I worked my way through Yukon by working on a farm. Connecticut's right to farm law, CGS 19A-341, gives farms protection to do things that normal people can't do. There's three conditions that qualify a farm for coverage. One's that operation's been in operation for over a year, which they have. Number two, operations have not been substantially changed. Now, by definition, in my mind, the request for a special use permit suggests to me that a substantial change is being suggested. So I questioned Oak Ridge protection under this law, the right to farm law. Additionally, are we to believe, as Summers residents, that Oak Ridge and this disastrous plan will not cause an impact to our town? A while ago, Oak Ridge was on the news talking about how they were good neighbors. Are we to believe that? Or do we look at their prior actions to attempt to see what we should expect? Last year at one of these forums, a resident spoke on how she lived on School Street, and at the light, the liquid manure spills over because these trucks leak, leaving a trail of putrid liquid, and she had to cross the poo trail in order to get into her driveway, thereby bringing the smelly liquid into our garage. I too have seen the leakage. When walking on Carriage Drive, there's a trail of liquid poo, if you will, that we have to step over. I've also seen a trail of poo on the bridge by the Mill Pond while fishing with my daughter. The trucks speed through our town, risking injury to our kids. And do their trucks really need to use their Jake brakes when pulling into a residential neighborhood before 7 a.m.? I think that their prior actions should be enough reason to stop them from the importation of another town's manure into our town. Section 22-323A-6 in the Connecticut regulations. B, manure transported over public highways on farm vehicles shall be in leak-proof containers, spreaders, or vehicles. Manure transported in other farm vehicles shall be in leak-proof and should be covered if necessary to prevent debris from blowing or falling out of transporting vehicles. Section C, any manure spilled on public roads are dumped on any property other than that which the intensive poultry farms located without the owner's permission shall be removed immediately by the vehicle owner or operator. Well, they leak liquid poo all over our town roads, but I have yet to see anybody cleaning that up. So I think, personally, I don't believe anything they say, and so I would be suspect of this. Thanks for your time, and thanks for listening, and thanks for all the work you guys do.
Any other comments from the public?
Oh, I had one more thing. I'm the person on School Street that you just talked about. Jill Conklin. So for years, these trucks have been coming through our town, and I've had this property on School Street for, 20 years. And they spill all over the place. But amazingly, right now, if you look at their trucks, they're not spilling anything. And I think it's because of this application before our town. They are clean. They're not dripping. They're not overflowing. I don't have any issues. But I think that's temporary. I don't think that will last because that requires spraying those things down probably after you fill them I really don't know what the process is when they fill them, but this is the first time ever in years that I have not seen this gestate all over the road. I used to drive out of my way to not have to deal with it because it's really bad. If you don't know it, you have to go over there on a nice hot day. But the other thing, I mentioned an environmental report or a study that would show, I know the town has the ability to request that because we've done it in other applications. You can request a study, like let's say a truck flipped over and it contaminated 30 homes, and they're all with nitrate, and they're all going to need high-quality filtration systems in their houses. What would be the potential damage? I would like the planning and zoning. Sorry, I'm so used to just separate, but I'd like the planning and zoning to ask the applicant to have a study like that so we can know what we're looking at. Because it's not, if, it's when. There will be something. And, Summers, most people, when I tell them I'm from Summers, they go, where's that? I don't want to be on the map for the wrong reason. I don't think we need this in our town. I don't think, these trucks are coming down. They're dumping. The way they were doing it before, I don't know if that was better or worse, but every time you move material from one truck to a container there's always a chance for human error, a malfunction. So obviously, I'm against this application. I'm thinking about all my neighbors, people in the town I know. It's not just about me, it's about you. It's about Mr. Parks and Dan. It's about everybody. I really don't want this here. And it's not in our regulation to have digestate. It's regular manure. And we used to say if it wasn't in the regulations, then it's not allowed. And I think that's why it's a special use permit, because it's not in our regulations and we don't have to accept this. And I hope we don't. Thank you for your time.
Any other comments?
Thank you, Dory Reiser, again for the record. I guess I'll just go kind of sequentially through some of the things that we heard. There was conversation, a discussion by Attorney Parks regarding the non-compliance with the regulations, and he draws your attention to the alleged failure to notify DEEP and Department of Ag. We discussed that a little bit earlier, and we actually discussed it at the last meeting as well with Attorney Slater, who is here, and he agreed that this is akin to a personal notice requirement that can only be raised as a defect by the person who's entitled to that notice. And there's absolutely no grounds for a statement that NRCS and DEEP have no idea what these plans involve because they know exactly about this operation. My client's in communication with them frequently about their CAFO plan, their nutrient management plan, and how it's being implemented, which includes the Rain 360 at this property. In fact, last fall, NRCS, I believe the first selectman, Mr. Keeney, perhaps even Ms. Roy, were on this specific property and witnessed the tanks and the Rain 360 because it was part of a grant that was issued and for climate sustainability and resilience, and it was the unveiling of it. So everyone is very aware of what's happening out here and this process that's taking place with the application of the digestate to the property. So again, I don't think there's any deficiency whatsoever with regard to compliance with your regulations. This is not an above-ground storage tank. We have all along said that this is a transfer tank. It is not holding anything for any extended period of time. The material, the digestate goes in, it comes out, it's emptied daily, it sits empty most likely overnight and gets filled again in the morning. Attorney Parks also calls your attention to the NRCS guidelines that say you can't have this within 300 feet of a well. Well, that refers to drinking water wells. Yes, it's close to a well on our property, but that's an agricultural irrigation well. It's there specifically to draw water, mix it with the digestate, and fertilize the fields. So that's a red herring, okay? That is not a non-compliance with NRCS standards. And in fact, as I said, NRCS knows exactly what's going on out there. They know what's involved in our nutrient management plan. They have been on site and seen it in operation. Attorney Parks also mentions that NRCS says that liquid waste from digesters that's applied on fields may have a higher risk for ground and surface water quality problems than manure because it's soluble in water. Well, that's why, they're not saying don't do it, but that's why NRCS is so particular in their nutrient management plan about application rates, because it is soluble and because by applying it right at the root, it goes right into the irrigation. And it's a good thing. It's a more efficient way of managing crops, but it needs to be carefully regulated, which is why NRCS and DEEP have this oversight and tell us the very specific application rates for the area of field involved. In that same publication, that same article, as I think one of the members pointed out, the paragraph above said the EPA states that manure digesters can reduce nutrient runoff into waterways as well as reduce odors and kill pathogens. That's a good thing. I don't take this submission as something that's anti-digestate application on the farm fields. I also don't think that the Commissioner of Ag stepping down has anything to do with a scandal having to do with failure to comply with a FOIA request having to do with this property. There's absolutely no indication that this application doesn't comply with NRCS standards. There's also no indication that NRCS and DEEP are not fully aware of everything that's happening with regard to the Rain 360 application on this field. Ms. Conklin had stated that the storage of manure regulations wasn't intended for this use. It was really intended for the small gentleman farms, animal manure storage on those smaller farms. I've been saying that all along. I was here saying this regulation was never intended to apply to the widespread application of fertilizers to fields. We don't think we need a special permit. That's the basis of a zoning, an appeal that's pending in the Superior Court. But again, this board felt otherwise. They wanted to see a special permit application. We're compliant. We're coming with compliant plans, just as you had requested. There was a question about whether this site is included in the CAFO permit. It is, and actually there's a memo dated June 11th of this year from the Director of Health and Land Use, Jeffrey Catlett, where he specifically states, we asked by email, does the CAFO permit for Oak Ridge extend into their Summers location, or do they need a permit for each location? And their response was, The permit includes all the locations utilized for land application. Deep states that even though Summers is not listed on the permit, the following applies. Land application area means any land owned, rented, leased, or otherwise controlled by the CAFO operator to which agricultural wastewater, or digestate are or may be applied. Now, this is a property of the operator. So it is encompassed in the permit. It is widespread known by the regulators. And the last thing I want to touch on is this an experiment or a fad, or what's the purpose of the change in process? It is sustainability, it's efficiency and improvements in farming operations, and it's not an experiment. It's not going away. Again, there is a grant that was given in order to set up this irrigation system on the Hurlburt Road property. It is an improvement over traditional farming operations, and if you look at that dairy environmental systems program two-pager that I had submitted, I'm just going to read a couple of things that show that this is a better way of doing things. This is the way of the future. Under improvement of water quality, it says application of AD or anaerobic digestion manure can be readily made in the late spring and in the summer on hayfields in compliance with concentrated nutrient management plan requirements and without causing neighbor relation issues. These growing crops are perfectly suited to utilize the additional nutrients while water quality is protected, as the risk of water runoff and leaching is low. If you go to the next page, under conservation and utilization of nutrient crops, it says recycling of these nutrients appropriately to the land base of growing crops is more efficient than fertilizer purchase. Effluent from AD can be stored long-term without significant odor problems, allowing farmers to apply nutrients to even sensitive cropland in an ergonomic, timely fashion, thus reducing the potential for surface water and or groundwater contamination, and odor issues often prevent stored manure from being applied to fields near residences. This is not an experiment, folks. This is tried and true. It was conducted last growing season on this property, and the town and NRCS are fully aware that this has been going on. This is the way that my client plans to fertilize their fields in the future until another new and better implementation comes along. I already took you through why we believe we comply with your regulations, not just your specific regulations with regard to storage of manure, if that's what you deem this to be, but also your special permit regulations. I'm not going to go through it again. You spent enough time and a lengthy amount of time through multiple public hearings on this, and we appreciate your patience. We appreciate the opportunity to be fully heard. We will answer any remaining questions that this board has, and short of that, I urge you to close the hearing tonight and begin your deliberations.
Thank you. Quick question.
Yes.
You said NRCS runs separate standards for agricultural and drinking wells?
The NRCS standards that are part of this document right here that was submitted by Attorney Parks, and it discusses having the 300-foot setback from wells, they are referring to drinking wells, not to agriculture irrigation wells that are not for drinking purposes.
How do we know that?
Well, we know that.
In my head, it's a shared aquifer.
Yeah.
So that they would have separate standards for an agricultural and a drinking well and a shared aquifer kind of surprised me, and I was looking for the source for that.
Jay, do you?
I hate to kind of just do that to you because, both of you are sort of, AI says this and AI makes up stuff faster than the federal government. And, and we're getting newspapers. I haven't seen, one bit of scientific data from either side. But when you're saying that there's a government standard that says 300 feet for drinking, but it's okay if the well's used for something different, I kind of want to know where that comes from.
Well, I guess I don't have a specific document to point to that says the differentiation between it, but I can point to the fact that NRCS is specifically aware of this operation, the location of the irrigation well, and the use of the tanks there. So they are aware that it's within...
What's our distance to the well, Jay?
40.
50 feet of the well there. And the concern and the reason that they have granted our nutrient management plan, which includes this property, is because they don't deem that to be an impediment and an applicable regulation or setback with regard to this well, a non-potable well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I have a question. Would you say on record that this digestate is safer than regular untreated manure?
I don't think I'm qualified to make that statement, but I don't know that, I don't know that we can talk about it in a safer manner. I mean, could manure or digestate pose a contamination issue because of phosphates or nitrogen or what have you in it? Potentially, but it's a heavily regulated product for my client, and their application rates are designed so that there will be no likelihood of groundwater contamination. I don't know that one is inherently safe or unsafe. It's not a carcinogen. It's not a.
My concern,
it's not inherently unsafe.
My concern is not the application process. I think the application process actually makes sense. My concern is the product itself and its safe and its hazard to the environment. If it's putting nitrates into the earth, obviously it's going to affect.
It is the same as manure. Its composition is the exact same as manure. So it is not any different. Actually,
what are your qualifications to make that statement?
Okay. I will tell you, I'm not stating, I'm going to read it from, give me a moment. Ready? You may, but let me just finish this real quick. In the NPDES permit and state permit that was issued and is part of the record, it defines digestate, means the solid and liquid material remaining after anaerobic digestion. It then defines anaerobic digestion. Where's that? I got to get my definitions. Hold on one moment. Make your statement while I'm trying to find out.
So it's same composer. Nothing changes. A cow poops, it goes into the manure pit, and we spread it on the field. Or cow poops, it goes into a methane digester. It's held there for 21 days. The energy comes off of it. Same liquid, same nitrogen, same composure. Then it goes to the manure lagoon. It's 21, nothing is added. Nothing is added.
To clarify, we do not have a manure lagoon here in Summers. You're talking about in Ellington.
In Ellington, yeah. Yep. So it's the same exact composure. It's just taking the gases off of it. But nutrients, we have to submit a test multiple times a year and submit an annual report to DEP, and then we can have a prescription. I think Brad spoke to this commission at one point. That like it's all prescribed, but it's the same exact. Cow manure is cow manure. Digestate, it's the same stuff. Nothing changes.
If you were unable to use the digestate, you would have to supplement it with synthetic fertilizer.
Synthetic fertilizer, yeah.
I don't think the question before us is whether or not they can use digestate. They can use digestate, but that's how they store the digestate during the application process.
And probably agree. We just keep going back to
we keep talking about
what the digestate is.
I don't believe we have the ability to act on what they're putting in the field.
It's about the tanks.
It's the process.
Your job here tonight is to determine whether the application meets the requirements of the zoning regulations and the specific special permit criteria. And those are laid out in your regulations. It's natural for these things to sort of migrate into the sort of things that we're talking about now. But when you get to the NPDES permit and deep requirements and deep regulations, you don't enforce that, and you don't have authority to enforce that. That's for deep and that's for NPDES. So really, your purview should be limited to what your regulations say and whether the application meets the criteria, the general and the whatever specific special permit criteria you have.
So are you saying we can't be concerned of what they're applying then?
The permit just for the tanks.
Right. No, I'm not saying you can't be concerned, but you have to look at it against the background of your regulations. The impacts of this, the potential impacts of this are A, B, C, and D. And how does that interleave with your regulation requirements under the special permit criteria? And any determinations you make as to how those impacts fit your regulations have to be supported by substantial evidence in the record. So the fact that someone might be concerned about odor or might be concerned about traffic, and I'm talking generally now, I'm not just talking about this specific application, anything having to do with how they impact your specific regulatory criteria has to be supported by substantial evidence. So if someone says, for example, that traffic is going to double because of this application, well, traffic is a funny one because courts tend to be more deferential to non-expert evidence regarding traffic because traffic is something that everything can talk about. But when you start talking about scientific criteria and toxicology and other environmental impacts, if you're going to vote to approve or reject on that basis, it should be supported in either case by substantial evidence in the record, and not just because of someone has a concern or someone has a fear or someone's got a feeling.
If I can just direct you back to some of the previous testimony that we had at the prior hearing. We talked at length about what happens in the anaerobic digester. And David Moser, just as Seth is saying tonight, had testified that the manure goes in, the manure is heated, correct? And held and heated at 100 degrees. At 100 degrees. And the gases, the methane, gets captured and is used for energy. And what then comes out, he had said, and you're saying, is liquid, and then the solid that's so clean, you press it, then you press it through, and the solid is clean enough to use as bedding. That fiber is used for bedding. And what remains is the liquid. So it's all part of manure. It's the same component, just takes the gas and the solid out. But it's the same nutrients that are in there. So they are interchangeable. When Brad Schwab was here, he wrote our nutrient management plan, and he testified previously. He talked about them interchangeably. I'm not the expert. I'm not saying that. I'm repeating what was already put in the record before you. They are. Digestate is a byproduct of manure, but it's got the same composition except the gas is removed and the solids are removed. It's got the same material that makes it up. So it's not inherently more dangerous or unsafe than manure. I think as your question was, which is safer, neither really is unsafe, but I suppose if they're not applied properly or they're stored in the wrong manner, they could be unsafe. That's why we're taking you through the very intricate process as to how they're stored and applied to the fields to assure you that there will be no runoff and groundwater contamination risks are minimized because of the application rates, right? That's what it all comes down to. How much nutrient are we putting on a certain section of the fields?
Yeah.
If we could stop the digester and drain the same stuff up and call it manure.
Well, yeah, I guess that's my point. I guess my thought is just, are we comparing apples to apples here? That's the real question. Is it environmentally safe just as the other? So you guys are saying it is. That's their argument saying it's not. So that's where, we don't have any scientific data to...
Well, we have the testimony of our expert, Brad Schwab, who was here at the last hearing, and he testified to that exact effect. And are we comparing apples to apples? I guess the component, the nature of the manure and the digestate is the same because it's got the same nutrients in it. Maybe it's apple to orange when you talk about liquid to solid form, but let's talk about the risks that come with the solid form. When you're stockpiling solid manure for an extended period on the fields, number one, more odor. Number two, heavier leaching and runoff because it's coming off of a solid. You don't have that with the liquid. So I guess in some instances it's the same, and some, when you're talking solid to liquid, it's a little bit different. But the risks, in our experience, with applying, either can, I don't want to say risks, because either can safely be applied to fields as long as you're putting it in the right proportions, right? But some of the issues having to do with runoff are mitigated when you're talking about direct application of the digestate.
Makes sense.
Okay?
Thank you.
A thought just came to mind, and I wanted to do this before we, possibly if you're going to close the public hearing, but Howie was absent on June 11th, so I provided him with all of the exhibits and the YouTube link. So he should state on the record that he feels that he has sufficiently reviewed everything and watched the last hearing. Thank you.
Yeah, so I Howard Coro, was given all the materials from the last meeting. I did review this and the YouTube video as well.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I have none. Can this audience still speak?
Yeah, we haven't closed the hearing yet.
Yeah, we have. This week I have my voice back. A couple comments been made that.
Let's try and talk to the microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. George Van Tassel, 15 Blue Ridge Drive.
You can move the mic over. There you go.
George Van Tassel, 15 Blue Ridge Drive. I was a member of the WBCA for over 25 years. And a statement I just heard is a little bit disturbing. There's no sign on the bottom of a well that says, you can only use this for farming and you can only use this for drinking. The well is a well. That's why the regulation by whoever it was wrote it. They're all connected to the same aquifer. If the one well gets contaminated, anyone in the vicinity can become contaminated. The next statement, let me just check my notes here. No difference between manure and digestate. Don't insult your intelligence. Manure comes out of the back of a cow. Digestate comes out of a digester. In their first presentation in January of 26, I believe, they had made a statement how using the nitrogen directly increases growth by 20%. So what John had said, Attorney Parks has said in the past, manure on steroids, that's exactly what it is. So I think I made my point that if you're going to know what's going on, wells are wells. They don't say which one can use for which. One more thing was brought up, that Jen and our first selectman was at the first showing of the 360. Jen and I had that discussion in regards to the tanks. And I was told, and Jen can confirm or deny it, that where they were standing, they could not see those tanks when they were viewing that field. Thank you.
We're still taking comments, right?
Good.
Okay. My name's Franco, by the way. I'm no mathematician, but a thought just came over me. We're talking 4 tanks, 80,000 gallons of liquid digest, right? And we're talking about filling them up at night, using it during the day, filling them up at night, using it during the day, and fertilizing the fields. And did anybody ever come up with a calculation of how many gallons of this digestive that's going to be used twice a season to fertilize this corn?
I would assume it's comparable what they do with their other process.
I mean, let's just talk about the field in Summers on Watchog Road. That's a pretty good sized field. I think the point I'm trying to make is how many millions, or maybe it'll go into the billions of gallons of fertilizer, liquid fertilizer.
Well, at the last meeting, they said it's going to be the same. The last meeting, they said it's going to be the same amount of truckloads. It's just spread out over.
Well, no, I mean, I'm not talking truckloads. I'm talking gallons.
Well, I mean, the truckloads would be.
No, forget the truckloads.
But they're filled by the gallon.
Forget the truckloads.
Okay.
Gallons of fertilizers in the fields that they're going to be using. Eventually, that's going to be a contamination spot. And then you have the houses up and down Hall Hill Road, Cantlewood, Fort Bridges. What's the dirt road next to us? John, what's the dirt road next to us? Durkee Road, Springfield Road, King Road. You got all those roads next to us. Eventually, those thousands and thousands and millions and billions of gallons of fertilizers going to be seeking out into the wells. Am I wrong or right?
Well, I think this gets into what the attorney was talking about before. We need to have that proven scientifically.
That's going to what?
Right. That has to be proven scientifically. It can't just be conjecture or feelings by somebody. Somebody has to actually prove.
I mean, it's common sense. Come on.
Actually, we are here to take comments from the audience. We are here to take comments from the audience. We are not necessarily capable of answering your question. Right? I mean, I can't tell you how much of that goes into the plant and how much of that goes into the ground. I'm not a soil scientist. I can't tell you how many gallons that truck holds and every time it goes there. I don't do bills of lading. You can make comments. We just can't answer your question.
No, I know
we
that.
don't know.
I know that. I'm making a comment. I'm making a point.
Okay, but you
I'm
keep
making a
asking us
statement.
to answer the question.
No, I don't want you to answer the question. I want to put some food for thought.
Okay.
It's got to go someplace. Okay? And we're talking phosphates here, nitrates. We're talking a fertilizer that's on steroids. Okay? We're talking something that's just not natural. Okay? It's got to go someplace. It's not going to be evaporated up into the atmosphere. It's going to be in the ground. And we're talking a big, big, big field here. And you're talking, filling the tanks up at night, using it during the day, filling them up at night. It's going to go someplace. And we got, homes all over the place. Think about it. Where's it all going to go? They don't live in Summers. I don't know where they live. And this is just one field in Summers. John came up with a report. This is not a good thing. And I go up and down the road all the time. I go up at the road on a Sunday, next Sunday. Yeah, the corn grows like a son of a gun. The corn grows really good, really good. Never seen corn grow so fast in all my life. It's an observation. Okay? I don't know why they need corn growing that fast for. Are they trying to put a bumper crop in or what? I don't know. In the old days, corn grew just as good as can be for silage. What this new fertilizer stuff is doing, I have no idea. But this stuff going into the soil, I don't think it's going to do us any good. That's all I got to say.
Thank you.
I'd like to respond to those last comments. I can't really recall if it was a 20% increase in crop production that Brad had attested to, Mr. Van Tassel had mentioned. It very well might have been, but the reason it increases crop production is because the fertilizer, not because it's different per se, it's because it's more effective, because it is being applied directly at the root of the product through the entire course of the growing season. That's what his testimony was. It's not because it's manure on steroids, it's because of the way it's being applied through the entire growing season instead of heavy up front loading and at the end. So that is why there's an increased production. More corn, great. Could it be a bumper crop? Great. My client has a lot of cows to feed. So the more efficient he can make his cropland, the better. With regard to putting it on the fields, first of all, we're not talking about applying it on the fields. We're talking about the tanks. But it's been raised with regard to putting it on the fields. The same amount of nutrients. You heard this testimony from our expert, Brad Schwab. The same amount of nutrients are getting into the ground as if we were using solid manure, or if we were applying it in a different way with just spraying the Rain 360 with the digestate. Same amount of nutrients because it's dictated by the nutrient management plan. That tells us how much we need per square foot, per square acre, per whatever, per field. Very specifically, this is how much you need. That's the quantity. And we're applying the same amount of nutrients, however we apply it, whether it was with the solid manure back in the day, whether it was the liquid digestate when it was just broadcasted, and whether it's with the Rain 360. It's the same amount of nutrients because that is what the plan sets forth. So these nutrients in these quantities have been heavily regulated, and they are getting into the ground now. They have been getting into the ground for decades, and they will continue to get into the ground. Nothing's changing. This is not going to become a hotbed for contamination just because we're applying it with this new methodology. Okay? Any other questions from this board?
How long have they been applying the digestate through the spraying method?
It was Rain 360 last year. They've been applying the digestate since they had their anaerobic digester, which, Jay, do you recall, Seth just left. And I know we spoke about it at one of the last hearings. But
since 2021, I think.
Yeah, it's only been a few years.
Well, 5 or 6 years.
Okay.
It was right around 2021 from what I remember.
So they've been using the digestate since they had their anaerobic digester in operation in Ellington. And it was initially broadcast. And then it went to the Rain 360 growing season last year, and that's where we're still at.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Okay. Well, I'll leave when you close the hearing.
More people are raising their hands.
Oh, okay. Then I'll come back.
Yeah.
You can do this all night.
My name is Nancy Ferrari. I live at 600 Hall Hill Road. When we were at the last meeting that I attended, the attorney stated that there was 391 trucks in previous years delivering the manure prior to this one, and we're up to 1,200 trucks.
I don't remember any conversation about the number of trucks.
She said it. I had it. It's in the recording. And I also want to know is, if you're putting 80,000 gallons in those tanks every day, how much does each truck hold?
Truck delivering it?
Yeah.
I believe it's 80,000.
No.
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 4 tanks or 80.
It doesn't really matter to what we're...
Well,
like what the trucks have.
because she said it's the same amount. It's not the same amount because the trucks are going to be more on the road than they were. We had them twice. We had them in the spring and in the fall to fertilize the fields. Now they're going to be there every day, every solitary day, putting this digestate there. And the nitrogen is, I know she says it's no different. It is very different. And the reason that they have so much waste there is because they collect all the cow waste and they sell the methane. So it's not the same product. The methane has been aggregated out. And I would like an aquifer study to be done, because if they have 80,000 gallons in those tanks and they're going to be adding more water, can our aquifer that we all survive on, can that function using 80,000 gallons a day? Because it's mixing that digestate with water to make it go through the Rain 360. So if that's happening, I think we need to know if the aquifer has that much water in it, and they should put a bond, in my opinion, that if the water is gone, that through the process in their farming, that they would have to provide water for all of us who live over there. I grew up behind the tobacco fields in Suffields. They were all contaminated. They put these giant filters on our water. They only did it for 3 years. After that, we paid $1,000 a year to use our water. And that was the same type of chemicals that made the tobacco grow. So I've already done that. It wasn't fun. They're out there in hazmat suits putting the stuff on, and we had contaminated water. So I would prefer not to do that again. Thank you.
Security bond's a good idea.
I don't really have any response. I believe I already addressed the issue with the trucks, and I don't think that's really the purview of this application anyway. Again, what this is about and what it's not about. It's about the storage of manure, or the digestate, in 4 closed steel movable transfer tanks in the location shown on the plan. That's what this is about, not odor, not traffic. I think that we've addressed that and gone over that enough. I don't think I need to respond again to that issue.
I don't have any questions.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Can we get a motion to close the public hearing? Second by me?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Next item on the agenda is the discussion and possible decision of application PZC 26-007, Oak Ridge Dairy LLC, seeking a special use permit for the storage of manure per section 214-3.3.C.5.D of the zoning regulations. Does anyone want to kick off the conversation?
that one of the things that concerns me up front is that well location. If we were to consider approving the application, I would strongly recommend that we do something with having them move the tanks at least 300 feet from the well.
That 300 figure, where did that come from?
NRCS regulations for...
It's in our regs?
No.
So that's my concern. Right, ruling on stuff outside of our regs, I would be very hesitant to do when other authorities or regulators are looking at that.
Yeah, again, your purview is limited to regs. And I hate to sound like I'm repeating it over and over, but it's important to keep it in mind.
That's true.
Yeah, the special permit criteria are listed in your regs. And so you've now closed the public hearing, so no more evidence can be taken because there couldn't be any cross-examination on it. So now you've begun deliberations, and you have to discuss, the subject of your discussion should be whether or not you believe that the application has presented is consistent with the regulations, and there's substantial evidence that was presented both at the last session and this session that would form a basis for a decision either to approve it or deny it.
But we quite commonly make conditions of applicants that aren't black letter regulation.
Yes, but you can make a condition, but again, a condition, it has to be based, a condition, I would say, like the decision to approve or deny, has to be based on substantial evidence. If there isn't substantial evidence in the record that if the question is it has to be 300 feet from a drinking water well, and this is not a drinking water well, and it's also covered by the NPDES permit.
Well, according to what was given in as evidence, it says well. It does not say drinking water well.
Well, and there's evidence to the other side saying that that's only applicable to a drinking water well. So, I don't know where that leaves.
But we're allowed to weigh the evidence, right? I mean, we can decide the veracity, which one sounds more accurate in our collective heads, right? I mean, that's the adjudicative process here.
Yes,
to an extent.
But it has to be based on some sort of objective knowledge, I guess is what I'm saying.
And my objective, my standard for making the recommendation was, I understand how aquifers work from my experience on planning, that several wells draw from the same aquifer, and if there's a recommended distance from a well, that I'm asking people, I would ask them to support that. I'm not even making a motion that we accept or reject. I was giving what I was seeing as an observation there. Something I thought would improve.
Yeah, but again, in the absence, what you're doing is making. I'm not saying one way or the other because I don't know either. But if you're talking about in the one instance how far it is from a well, and then if it's too close to that well, then it's going to be it's in an aquifer, and so the effluent or whatever is going to migrate to other wells.
A well is a hole in an aquifer. A well is a direct, literally a direct pipe into the aquifer.
Yes.
Yes. It would cross-contaminate.
Right.
Again, I don't know.
Yep.
Well, it's subject matter experts to.
Well, the public hearing is now closed, so there's no more evidence to be taken.
We know all we're going to know.
Now that the public hearing is closed, you have 65 days to issue a decision. So,
I'm not sure time brings me clarity on this.
Well, No, I'm just pointing it out. You can make a decision this evening, or you don't have to.
I'm more concerned about the product and the hazard to the environment in comparison to the regular manure, personally.
Why's that?
Because you're changing the biological makeup of it, and I don't have the scientific data to back it up saying it's the same.
The first meeting, they had stated that the amount of the rate in which it's applied is the same. And it's the same, it's the actual same nitrate level. It's just, instead of it being 50% at the beginning of the year and 50% at the end of the year, it's delivered slowly throughout the year at a smaller rate.
Look, I was dehydrating herbs this week. There is now more plant matter than water in there, now that it's dehydrated. It sounds like a very similar process. You warm something up, the gas comes off. There's nothing being added to it according to the testimony we've had.
I just don't know.
Whether it's dehydrated or processed.
Well, we can only consider what's brought into evidence.
I mean, in the long run.
Self-educate? No, we're supposed to consider what's brought into evidence here. It's not for us to go and research.
We don't have any authority over what the fine. It's already mandated by the state.
Our beginning product was poo. The end product is some sort of processed poo without anything being added to it, according to the testimony we had. So it's a form of poo that has been laid on straw and then had the straw separate. I mean, we can get into all kinds of in-depth into how that works, but it's now the manure pile out in back of the barn when I grew up got smaller over time because some of it rotted, some of it off-gassed, and some of it went into the soil. This seems to be an expedited process of
Right, I haven't seen anything that shows it's different. They write a prescription for the soil, and they're still going to deliver the same amount of nutrients to that soil, whether it's solid manure or liquid manure. Yeah. So it's still going to be the same nutrients. What those nutrients do and how they're applied can affect the
crop. In fairness to the process and why we're here, this came before this commission because of the amount of product in the container, not what the product was.
Yes.
You can have a poo pile this big. If your poo pile is this big plus a shovel, then you need a special use permit. This doesn't measure by shovel, but we're not discussing what we've decided, because we're under this heading, under this regulation, we've already determined this to be manure. If this isn't manure, we're not in this regulation. Right? Because it's kind of like the past chairman said, when this regulation was written, nobody considered that people would do anything with manure other than spread it around.
I guess that's my question.
Well, that's changed because stuff does. I never thought I'd be plugging my car in.
Yeah.
But things change. So we decided that this is poo because that's what brings it into the statute. And we've decided that this is a volume question because if it's under a certain volume, it still doesn't trigger the statute. And we've decided that these containers are somehow storage. Even though the more I look at this thing, this looks like the grandson of the old manure spreader. You know, if you just look at the wagon and don't look at that back piece, it's a wagon. If you look at the tank and don't look at the things hooked to it, it's a tank. I mean, in my head, this thing, the more and more I read this stuff and see this stuff that they gave us, the more this thing looks like a manure spreader to me.
I don't think the intention is to store it long term. It's certainly just to storage. Like you said, the wagon to spread the manure.
Yeah.
If I could, I was talking before about you have to apply the special permit considerations. They're in section 9.4E of your regulations on 181 and 182. And I'll just list them. Compliance with the zoning regulations, consistency with the plan of conservation and development, orderly development, whether the commission finds that the location type, character, size, and intensity of the use is in harmony with the appropriate and orderly development of the town, and whether the design, layout, and operation will be compatible with nearby properties and/or have negative impacts on the enjoyment, usefulness, and value of nearby property. I'm paraphrasing. You'd want to read the whole thing. Appropriate location. Whether the commission finds that the proposed use will be appropriate for the location proposed, and whether the size, height, and intensity of buildings and activities will reasonably harmonize with the character of the neighborhood. The degree of care and attention taken to protect the adjacent area and the public's purpose to be served by the proposed facility, and public safety. Adequate provision for the purpose of fire protection, police protection, and emergency equipment, after considering the nature and location of the proposed use. So, traffic congestion, protection of important resources, whether the proposed development adequately protects important natural resources and community resources, landscaping and buffers, whether the commission finds that suitable landscaping and buffers will be provided in conformance on the site. So those are the sorts of things that you need to, that's the criteria that you need to apply. The application is before you now, and the proper thing to do is to make a decision up or down. Separate from here, and it's not part of this proceeding. There's already an appeal pending. That's really got nothing to do with anything. I'm not sure why I mentioned that, but it's not. My point is, this is all going to be adjudicated one way or the other. So. I think the application having been submitted and the public hearing having been held, that the applicant is entitled to a decision up or down. So I think that's where you need to focus.
Well, just to put something on the table, I'll make a motion that we approve the application.
Is there a second for that?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Was that unanimous?
I vote. So you're abstaining? Yeah.
Okay, so 4-1. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. We'll push the old business conversation wetlands to the next meeting, and then the final is approve the minutes from the June 11th meeting. Motion to approve the next meeting. All in favor? Aye. Motion to adjourn? All in favor? Aye. Thank you.